Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 282, just like it says right there. Recorded live. This is an extra one. It was recorded on Leap Day, February 29th, 2016. I am your host, Todd Klindt, and currently not leaping. And you can find out about all the crazy things that my sponsors, Rackspace, I work at Rackspace. I kind of like those guys. You can find out about all the great SharePoint things that we do at sharepoint.rackspace.com. We host SharePoint. We just love SharePoint. We love it up one side and down the other. And we also do other things in the Microsoft stack. So go out to www.rackspace.com/Microsoft and find out about what we have for Azure and Exchange and all the other cool but lesser than SharePoint technologies that we host at Rackspace. All kinds of great things there. And while you're out there on the web and doing all the crazy things that you do, going to Rackspace's site and going to Rackspace's other site and finding videos of sneezing pandas. I do love me a video of a panda sneezing. Open up in the tab, go to toddklint.com/blog and go see what I'm up to out there. I do some blogging, a little bit here and there, do some podcasting, all that business. You can also go out to Twitter and find me at Todd Klindt. I'm on Instagram at Todd Klindt, though I believe I have never, ever posted on Instagram. I can't even begin to guess what I would post there, but I'm out there on Instagram. You can find me there as well. Let's move on to the production notes. There was no podcast last week. I was at SP TechCon. More about that in a second. So you guys got the week off. The previous podcast was recorded on the 15th of February, 281. And I got that production out a little late. I thought I did everything. I was playing a little bit last time with scheduling tweets and scheduling YouTube things. So I'll have the video and all that figured out tomorrow morning. It'll all be rendered and finished and all that. And normally what I do is I wait until Thursday morning to upload it to YouTube. And I'm thinking, as I was in Twitter scheduling tweets for some things, I'm like, man, I can't believe YouTube doesn't let you schedule when a video goes public. That's just dumb. They should do. Oh, wait, they absolutely do that. So I got so excited 2 weeks ago about having YouTube schedule when my podcast came out. I forgot to do all the other things that I needed to do. So I got those out today. 281 is out and ready to go. 282 is not too far behind it. But sorry about all that. Now on to the topics. Gonna breeze through. Got a lot of things to talk about. Been a couple of weeks since we've talked. Again, trying to keep this thing to 30 minutes or so, which is going to be tough this week. But I'll do my best Micro Machine Man impersonation and talk about as much as I can in the 30 minutes that we have together. The first thing I want to talk about is why I wasn't here last week. I was at SP TechCon in Austin, Texas. Always love going there. I believe at this point I am one of two people who have spoken at every SP TechCon. Had a blast. Wasn't able to stay as long as I wanted because Rackspace had another technical event in San Antonio that same week, so I had to kind of split my time between them. So I only got to spend like 48 hours at SP TechCon. It was very sad, but I made it worthwhile. I did a couple of very important things, but two that I want to talk about today. The first was I ran into a friend of Joanne Klein's. Actually, she ran into me. She hunted me down, found me at my very first session. So she was dedicated, and she gave me a bag, and I forgot to bring it down because of a bunch of stuff. But Joanne Klein, who could not make this SP TechCon on her own, one of my friends from Western Canada, sent a goodie bag full of Canadian candy and food down with this friend of hers, and she sent her friend over to give me this bag of candy. So I want to give Joanne a very public shout out for that. Because of some crazy logistics, I was packing for 3 different trips on that, and my suitcase was full. Not all of your Canadian food made it home because there just wasn't space. But one of the things that she provided me was honest to goodness maple syrup from Canada, not this Mrs. Butterworth's or Aunt Jemima's or any other weird female non-existent figure named maple syrup. Honest to goodness things came out of a tree and went directly into a metal tin, and then has to be chilled after it's open. This is the good stuff. So I like that. My daughters like to have pancakes for breakfast, and they're fine with the Mrs. Butterworth's. I've given them explicit instructions that they're not allowed to eat the Canadian maple syrup except with my okay and my supervision to make sure that they show it the proper respect. But she also sent a bunch of Canadian candy. Smarties, the Canadian Smarties, not the American Smarties, little gold coins, which were loonies. I assume I actually didn't look at them, but they had the gold and the silver, or the bronze and the silver, so they look like loonies. just a lot of fun. My kids really enjoy the Canadian candy, and so that was a great time. So Joanne, I gave Susan my thank you, but make sure that we let her know that it was much appreciated. So I did get my fix of Canadian candy. I do appreciate that. For those of you on the video feed, I took some pictures of it before I consumed it and packed it. I'll put a couple of pictures up right here. And so then the next thing that I did, I always tell you folks when I'm at a conference, come find me and come say hey and all that. And had somebody take me up on it, Ross Chaplin, who has been listening to the podcast forever, one of the people who generously gave during the donation drive. He was at SP TechCon. I am certain I've talked to Ross before, but I couldn't remember where from. But I went and found him, and we chatted, got caught up, and that was a good deal. Talked to Ross. I hopefully came out with a positive experience. I'm a real friendly guy. Had a bunch of people come up to me, excuse me, and talk to me at the conference. And by all means, do that. Had a blast getting caught up with people. Had a good time. Felt really bad that I had to leave early, so I couldn't do all the fun ththings. There was some pretty funny speaker gifts. I don't know if you've seen them yet. I'm not going to spoil them for you, but next week, hopefully I'll have mine, and we will we'll be able to enjoy the speaker gifts that the SP TechCon folks gave us. It was very unconventional and very hysterical. I enjoyed that. But SP TechCon was great. More about SP Tech. Well, I'll spoil right now. The next SP TechCon is in Boston, and it is the week of June 27th through the 30th. I have every intention of being there. I plan on showing up. I've already talked to David Rubenstein. It looks like I'm a go. And so I will see you guys hopefully in Boston in June. Topics, haven't decided on them yet, but it'll be something fun. It'll be something exciting, I promise. So while I was at SP TechCon, I was asked to be on the Austin SharePoint user group, asked to speak at a panel that they had Monday night, and I did that. It was a great time. So shout out to Brian for inviting me to that. I appreciate that. Hopefully the people who watched it got a good time. But another person that was on the panel was Jeremy Thake, who now works at Microsoft as a developer evangelist. And he also has a podcast for developers. Don't hold that against him. He does a pretty good job with his developer-y podcast, but he recorded that session for his podcast, and you can go out and find that now at blogs.office.com. And it's the Office 365 Developer Podcast. This is episode 86, the one that I'm on. You can go download that now, and it's got the whole thing. I haven't listened to it yet, but I assume that I come out sounding at least as intelligent on the recording as I did in person, which honestly isn't very intelligent, but there were some good questions. And you can download that in its entirety. I was there. Susan Handley was there. Jeremy Thake was there. Now I'm forgetting people that were there. Ben Nyland was there. Oh, and I'm blanking on the guy sitting next to me, Dave Feldman, I believe. Yep, Dave Feldman. So it was a good varying degree of expertise, developer, end user, whatever it is that I'm good at. It was a good time. So I encourage you to go out and listen to Jeremy's podcast. That was a good thing. Another thing I'm considering, kind of a tangential thing, is I'm considering setting up an RSS feed for things that I'm in that aren't my podcast. Like I was on Run As Radio, I was on a Rackspace thing a couple of weeks ago, and just throwing together an RSS feed so you guys can keep up on those things. So haven't fleshed that out completely yet, but I might do that. We'll just see, make it easier for you guys to keep up with all that. It was a busy week or so for those of us in the SharePoint field. Not only was I at SP TechCon and speaking at user groups, I also posted another article at Petri.com. If you aren't familiar with Petri.com, it's Petri.com. Daniel Petri started it, but it's become kind of a hotbed for IT pro Windowsy things. There's a bunch of friends like my friend Jeff Hicks writes about PowerShell there. Paul Thurrott talks about things there. Brad Sams talks about things there. And they've asked me to weigh in on some SharePoint topics now and then. So there were some improvements to Office 365 a couple weeks ago. Mark Cashman posted a blog post, and I posted a blog post about his blog post on Petri.com. So you can get that. I'll have the link in the show notes here, but you can go to Petri.com and search for my name, and it's in there. But there were some cool things that they talked about, and things that impact us SharePoint folks, even if we're still on-prem SharePoint folks. So remember that SharePoint 2016 server, SharePoint server, started its life as SharePoint Online. This is the first time the SharePoint on-prem product started out as an online product and then became an on-prem product. It used to be the other way around. They take the on-prem product and make it online. They've gone the other direction this time. Because of that, a bunch of the features that show up first in Office 365 kind of get beta tested for us on-prem folks before they make it down. So we can see some of these things. So for Office 365, one of the things they mentioned in this blog post is the individual file upload limit is no longer 2 gig, it's now 10 gig. And that's nice. Obviously, the SharePoint 2016 betas have shown some of that, but it's good that it's official now in Office 365. To handle all these large uploads, they also announced that Office 365 tenant storage quotas are going to be increased to 1 terabyte, plus an additional ½ gigabyte for every licensed user, not counting the users' My Sites or OneDrive for Business sites. Those continue to be unlimited for Office 365 folks. So if you've got an Office 365 tenant, and it's the businessy ones, it's the enterprise ones and things like that, 1 terabyte for your tenant plus ½ gig for each user. And then finally, they kind of talked about what the licensing is going to be like for the cloud search service application. And Mark said that the cloud search service application will now start licensing 1 million on-prem items in Office 365. So if you've got your cloud search service application crawling your on-prem farm, pushing all of that up to an index in Office 365, the first 1 million items are covered by your Office 365 license. So some great things there. Go out to Petri.com and get my take on all that. And if that doesn't cover it all, then I suppose you can read Mark's blog post. But really, I think I hit all the important stuff. They also talk about some auditing things that are coming to Office 365 that give you a lot of auditing features. Who viewed which files, who deleted which files, things like that. It's good stuff. So go ahead and check that out. And if you've got an Office 365 tenant, go out and play with it a little bit. If you don't have an Office 365 tenant, you can sign up for a trial, a demo for free, and play with some of these new features. Good stuff. Okay, so another thing that happened, another online thing. Well, I'll get back to that. My notes are in a bad order, but we'll go with the notes order. So I was on a customer call today, talking to a customer about some scaling and things like that, and this was for on-prem SharePoint 2013. We were talking about things like site collection size and number of web apps and database sizes and all that. And I got to break out the old software boundaries and limits for SharePoint 2013 document. That document has been around for a while. That document's coming up on 3 years old that I've been peddling that thing. But I noticed when I got it out there that everything's changing online. We just talked about how Office 365 is changing. It's tough to keep documentation updated, but Microsoft has done a good job. And I noticed that the last time this software boundaries and limits document for SharePoint 2013 was updated was January 5th. So not too long ago, just a couple of months ago. And they've been keeping that updated. So as the product improves, as patches come out, and as they continue testing things, they are increasing the limits, and then they're updating these documents to reflect all that. So a few notable things in there, and I couldn't tell from a once over, I don't think they had a changelog in that document as to what they actually added last month, but it does cover things like if you have a site collection that is doing all of the things that SharePoint can do, and by that we mean things like workflows and alerts and all that, all those active processes that the server is doing. The site collection limitation is 4 terabytes. That's a pretty big site collection, but the software handles it now because of some intelligent decisions, they've made with SharePoint. They can handle that. So all the limits that we first had when SharePoint 2013 RTM'd, give those another once over. Take a look at them. Check this document out. It's the SharePoint 2013 boundaries and limits document. All kinds of good things in there. And they've got limits for SharePoint. They've got limits for the Office web app, limits for the machine translation service, all of those. If you've got a SharePoint 2013 on-prem farm, it's just a good idea to kind of breeze through that thing and see what your options are. But again, they're keeping that up to date. Documentation in and of itself is not a whole lot of fun. I understand there are some folks that enjoy it. I'm not necessarily one of those folks. So documentation in and of itself is not a blast, but going out and continually updating the documentation, that shows that shows some dedication. So I was really glad to see that had been updated. Another thing that has been updated, and you guys have heard me gush about this project before. This is a CodePlex project. It is the SharePoint Client Browser, or spcb.codeplex.com. The SharePoint Online Client Browser, it's now at version 2.1, is a great little way of looking at your SharePoint objects, site collections, webs, whatever, and seeing the properties of them without getting on the server, without playing with PowerShell, all these kind of things. It's a great little tool that uses the client-side object model, works with SharePoint 2013 on-prem, works with Office 365. And again, it's just like a little WinForm app that you point at a site collection, and it's got trees, and you can pop it open and look at users and workflows and settings and all kinds of fun things inside that are just tough to get at from the UI, if you can get at them at all in the web UI. Free download, the SharePoint Client Browser. That's one of those. I've got a folder in OneDrive or Dropbox, I forget which one, where I keep all the little tools. So I've got the ULS viewer in there and the search tool that I've just got wherever I need it. So if I'm on a SharePoint server somewhere and I need to pull one of these tools out to do something, I've got it in this cloud backup. This is one of those tools. I don't need it very often, but if I ever need to check a setting for something and I just can't find it quite in the UI, and for whatever reason it's not availing itself to me on the server, this is one of those go-to tools. So free download, go out there at spcb.codeplex.com. Oh, right. So here's a super exciting thing that I've been waiting to talk to you guys about. And this came, it was a good thing. It came at a bad time, though. As products have progressed and as my career has progressed, I'm doing more and more online things, Office 365 things, Azure things that I would have never done a couple of years ago, that I outright shunned a few years before that. Now I'm doing as a general course of action. My friend Tom LaRock, who is on Twitter as SQL Rockstar, had this great tweet last week. It was like, and I'm going to get the times wrong, but it was something like, in 2012, the cloud is stupid. In 2014, don't ask me about the cloud. And in 2016, come to my session so I can tell you what an expert I am in the cloud. It's been kind of like that for me, but it's been good, and I'm enjoying it. The tools are great. The functionality is great. The software is great. I'm really enjoying it. One of the things that I do sessions on and that I've been playing with a lot passionately is Azure Active Directory. Azure AD is something that, it's what Office 365 uses for authentication in the background, but it does so much more. And it's just something, for whatever reason, 6-8 months ago, I saw it at Ignite and started playing with it. I'm like, wow, this is really, really fun. I can see a lot of great uses for this, and have just really dug into it. For SP TechCon, I was doing a talk on it, and it was about how to get your Windows Active Directory set to sync up to Azure Active Directory. And the tool that you use to do that is a tool called Azure AD Connect. And it is a great tool, does so many awesome things. I've done this talk a couple of times before. Jason Himmelstein and I did an IT Unity webcast on it. And so, I had it all done. I had the deck done. I updated a couple of things, but it was all ready to go. Well, then Thursday of last week, my wife and I were away from home, doing some traveling for her work, ironically. I've already submitted my decks and all that off to SP TechCon. I'm out on the web looking for, all kinds of distractions, and I see that Microsoft has updated Azure AD Connect. The Thursday before the Monday that I have to present on it to a bunch of you fine folks at SP TechCon. So I spent a big bulk of my time on Friday updating all of my screenshots and updating my slides and all of that. So I was glad to see the Azure AD Connect update. I wish they could have timed it a little differently. So at least a couple of you in the chat room were in my sessions last week. Hopefully you appreciated the extra work that I went into while I was on vacation. I was just hanging out by the pool, getting mani-pedis and all that kind of stuff. But I took some time away from that so that I could update my slides for you. But the new Azure AD Connect that came out last week, or 2 weeks ago now, adds some great functionality and a few things that we really, really needed. So one of the things is it now allows inside of the UI, inside of Azure AD Connect, full support for selecting users by OU. In the past, when we set up our sync connection and all that, we could only do a domain or a domain group. And then if we wanted to do something else, then we had to go in the back end and we had to mess with FIM, which is where all this stuff actually happens. It was mostly supported. It might have been officially supported, but it was just a bad idea. FIM is just scary. It's worse than, swimming less than 2 hours after you've had lunch. Just a bad idea. But now that's built into Azure AD Connect. So when you're setting up your sync connection, you have the option of selecting one or more OUs. So that is perfect. And for a few of our customer engagements, they've wanted that exact thing. Now they've got it. And the Azure AD Connect client, you can set it to auto update. So they may already have it and not even know it. So that was one of the great things. On that same screen, they added another piece of functionality that has bitten us a couple of times, and that is the option for adding all domains. So where this has bitten us is if we have a environment that has multiple domain trusts, and when we run the Azure AD Connect wizard and get it started up, for whatever reason, because of VPN connections or whatever, one of the domains is not available. And if that was in the past, if it wasn't available at configuration time, there's just no good way to add it. Now we have this option for all domains. So it just says everything, and then once everything gets connected, it goes out and connects all the domains. So that was another good feature that was added, and I like all that. So for functionality standpoint, those were the two big things. Very easy to use OU support for all domains. They added a couple of things under the covers that I'm really excited about. One of them, more PowerShell. The amount of PowerShell commandlets that come with Azure AD Connect now is fleshed out. There's 60 or 70 some, I forget the exact count. And they handle a bunch of the use cases. So now there's ones for new AD Sync OU and things like that. The ability to configure a lot more things inside of PowerShell than we could with the previous versions. Big fan of that, fully support that. The other thing that they add is the ability to kick off a sync with PowerShell. So with previous versions of Azure AD Connect, if you made some catastrophic change, deleted a user, added a user, something, and it was, the next 3 hour sync was a long time from now, you had to go in and do this whole maneuvering thing and find an executable and run it. That would kick off a sync. Now there is actually a commandlet start AD sync connection that will kick off an immediate sync and sync whatever you need. I was pretty excited about that because I prefer things in PowerShell. Of course, that meant a bunch of scripts that I had to go through and fix, but it is what it is. The other thing that they did was they took that 3 hour sync time and they shrink that down to 30 minutes. So fewer needs for triggering that sync, but if you need to, it's all out there in PowerShell. So again, Azure AD Connect, you can tell it to automatically update itself. If not, you can go out and download it, and I've got the links in the show notes now. Yeah, so Lori mentions in the chat room, the commandlet is start AD sync connection. So with PowerShell, the nouns have prefixes depending on which package, like all the SharePoint ones start with SP and all that. Azure AD Connect, all the nouns start with AD sync and then sync connection. So it's AD sync connection. Yeah, I had to double check that one the first time I used it. But get on out there. So if you don't have yours set to automatically update, you can go out to the show notes for this. We'll have the link, or you can go out and find those and upload those. I did a couple of upgrades, went pretty smoothly. The other great thing, and the old one had this option too, if you ever need to change any of these options, OUs or whatever, just rerun the setup. It jiggles all the bits and reconfigures everything and then kicks off a sync. Very, very excited about this tool. It has just gotten better and better. This tool is a great example of how agile software development is supposed to work, and how moving to the cloud and all these big phrases of hyperbole that we've been hearing for all these years. This is exactly how it's supposed to work. Thursday afternoon, just minding my own business. New version comes out, adds all this functionality. So I'm excited about that. On a sadder note, but don't worry, I'm going to end on a high note, but on the sadder note, we learned last year that for Office 365 consumer, not business, Office 365 for pleasure, OneDrive for pleasure, that the unlimited storage was going away. And now we're starting to see how that happens. So when that news first broke in November or whenever it was, they said that this year they would start phasing, or they would give us a thing that would start phasing it out. We know now that storage will end on March 1st, 2017. That was the thing where everybody got unlimited storage. Now I think it's fallen back to 15 gig. For $100 a year, you can get a terabyte. I forget where all the numbers are at, but there's an article on Petri by Brad that talks about that. For me, I was able to go in earlier and save all my stuff, or save my settings. So I'm sitting pretty good. I think I've got a terabyte. I've also got Office 365 personal home, whichever is the one that gives you 5 things, and that gives me a terabyte per person. So that's $100 a year. That gives me all the Office products, gives 4 of my family members all of the Office products, and a terabyte of OneDrive and a couple other things for $100 a year. Great plan if you're not using it, but that gives you more storage in OneDrive. Like the article from Brad says, when they made the decision to go unlimited, they thought they were being pioneers and that everybody was going to go unlimited and they were just going to beat everybody to the punch. And they had this idea of, they were going to set it off and be unlimited and lead that charge. And then they look back behind them and like, hey, where'd everybody go that was going to do the unlimited? Hey, what, guys? And so they ended up having to scale it back. So that was one of the things that they did. It kind of stunk. I wasn't excited about how they messaged that or the fact that they did it at all, but I've mostly gotten over it, drowned my sorrows in some Girl Scout cookies and watched some Oprah, and I've made it past that. But again, if you're a heavy user of the Office products or OneDrive and you've got multiple people in your house, Office 365 Home is good. It's a good deal for $100. You get a lot for that. I told you, I promised you some good news. This is one of several happy stories that I've got for you. This one is that PowerShell version 5, or the Windows Management Framework, WMF 5, is out again. Yeah, so some of you might be thinking this is deja vu all over again. The Windows Management Framework came out a few months ago, and it included PowerShell v5. And then because they found some bugs, they took it away, and there was much sadness in Mudville. But last week, on the 24th, they released it again, and as far as I know, it has not destroyed anybody's servers or anything. So if you have something that's not Windows 10, go download that, and you'll get PowerShell v5. It has some things that the PowerShell in Windows 10 does not have, but they've promised there'll be an update for that, so you'll get that pretty soon. I've been kind of waiting. I've got some PowerShell v5 things to chat about, but I was waiting to try them, and then I couldn't get the RTM bits, and it seemed bad to tell you guys about it if I couldn't do it. But now that that's out, I've got a couple of those. So there's a blog article on MSDN, but then, of course, I just realized this, yet another Petri.com link. This is one to Jeff Hicks's article about that. So go out to Petri.com, look for Jeff Hicks, and he's got an article about PowerShell v5 and some of the great things that you can do with it. Again, be very careful on your SharePoint servers. SharePoint 2010, SharePoint 2013, they all have very specific versions of PowerShell that they will support. There are ways to make SharePoint work on a machine with PowerShell v5 installed. Figure that out in your test environment first. Don't do that on the farm that we lovingly refer to as production. You will be very sad. Definitely one of those have your resume on a USB stick kind of situations. But it can be done. You just got to be very careful with it. All right. More good news. You probably saw me sporting this sexy band too, and you're thinking to yourself, Todd, I would love to be cool like you and have a band too, just like you, but the gosh darn things are just too expensive. You're in luck. You're in luck, fine listener. For the next month, Microsoft has reduced the price of the Band 2 from a staggering $250 to a much more reasonable, enticing cost of $175. And this is online, in the stores, whatever. They're knocking $75 off till March 26th. And I got my Band 2 here a couple of months ago. I forget. I didn't get one right away. I had to try one on and make sure that I really liked it. I did really like it. I can tell you that for the first time this weekend, I went for a run with this and got to try the new features that come with this. Worked out great for my run. It has a couple of nice features for running. One of them is it has a low power GPS setting. So when I run, I use GPS. You can't see that because I've got the autofocus shut off, but it has a GPS power saver option. And that is for folks not like me, but folks that run for long distances. It keeps your battery from going dead when you're doing those long distance runs. So I know at the end of last fall, when I quit running, I was running like 7.5 miles per time. And if I didn't charge right up till I started my run, there was a couple of times when the battery would die while I was out on my run. And as we all know, if an electronic device does not record your exercise, it doesn't count. It's like you didn't even do it. So those were sad days. But now we've got this long-range GPS option on the Band 2. And the Band 2's got all kinds of other great features that I love. Having owned a Band 1, I definitely consider the Band 2 an upgrade. It fits better. It's lighter. The screen's better. There's functionality that the Band 1 doesn't have. I'm a big fan. And now you can get one for $175. An additional story, and this is going to be crazy to you guys. I did not get this from Petri.com. I don't know what I was doing. This one is on WinSupersite.com. Rod Trent, who writes for WinSupersite, has a band and does all the Microsoft things, but he's also a runner and he runs a lot. He probably runs more in a day than I run in a month. But he wrote an article about the Band 2 and answers the question, how long can the Microsoft Band store data? And this was actually something that I have been curious about because I've noticed my Band and my phone haven't stayed in sync a lot. Now, there have been a couple updates for the Band in the last week that hopefully will fix that. But I've wondered to myself, what happens if my Band records my run, but then it never gets written up to Microsoft Health? Then does it count? Well, it turns out with some research that he did and some people that he talked to, it looks like the Band can hold weeks or months worth of activity, depending how often you run, whether the runs have GPS data associated with them and things like that. So fortunately for me, I'm not very active and I don't run very far. So I've got months of stuff in here that I can keep track of. But I don't normally go a week or so. If I've noticed that it hasn't synced, I'll check it. But that was good. I was glad to know that there was a lot of storage on there that I was able to not lose data. So if you haven't gotten a Band 2 yet, I'm a fan. I like it. It does a lot of functionality. Now that it's kind of gotten warm enough for me to talk myself into running, I'm doing that again. You guys have noticed probably through this podcast that I'm getting kind of raspy in my throat. I went out and ran today at lunch. It was like 45 degrees. And so my throat's a little raspy from that. But that was all the Band's fault. I wanted to go for a run with the new Band. Okay, so that was all the topics, just a little over 31, but I got a couple things to talk about. So did some promotion earlier in the episode. I was on the Office Developer Podcast. You can check that out at the link, and it's in the show notes, and you can catch that Jeremy Thake's podcast. I'm on there. I will be in Dev Intersection, your next chance to see me in person. If you're not one of the people that camps out in the bushes on the north side of my house, and if you do, I'm still setting food out for you. It's all good. Stalkers encouraged. If you're not a stalker, the next time you can see me in person is April 16th in Orlando at Dev Intersection. You can go to devintersection.com and sign up for that. There's also a link on toddklindt.com. And remember, if you sign up for Dev Intersection, you want to use the promo code Klindt. That gets you many things. It gets you like $50 off your registration. I think it gets me $50. It gets you guaranteed front row seats in all of my sessions. It gets you kissed by a unicorn. There's just a lot of benefits to using the Klindt promo code when you sign up for Dev Intersection. The biggest one is you'll be able to help me lord it over my fellow speakers when I have more referrals than they do. Over the years, a lot of conferences have done things like this. SP TechCon does it every time. I never promote that. And I've spoken at Dev Connections before and some of these. But for whatever reason, this time I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm playing the game. So I encourage you to go out and sign up at devintersection.com. Promo code Klindt, Klindt, D as in Delta, T as in Tango, to get that $50 off and to give me the feeling of superiority over my fellow speakers. I talked a little bit earlier that the next SP TechCon will be June 27th through the 30th in Boston, Massachusetts. Always a great venue out there. Always have a good time. If you're going to be in the Boston area, come to SP TechCon. If you can't come to SP TechCon, send me an email, shoot me a tweet, and we'll find some time to hang out. But I will be in Boston that week in June. It should be a good time. And then I alluded to this 2 weeks ago, and it hasn't been announced yet. I have another event coming up. An online event, I can tell you that much, but it hasn't been officially announced yet, so I can't say anything, but there will be another opportunity for you to hang out with me online. Thanks, everybody. Looks like I went a little over about 35 minutes. I will be here next week. I have every plan on doing this. Last week was a fluke, and just with the afternoon and the sunspots and all that kind of stuff, but next week I will see you here. So until then, keep on keeping that SharePoint running, and I'll see you next week.